Yeah, well, it took me. I bet it took me 2 hours to figure out how to trim it right down to like all that empty space off. So yeah. Okay, so the recording is underway. I'll go ahead and pull up the deck, and we can jump in. Okay, you can see that.
Yep.
The thing I don't like about Teams is I can't see you. So, but as long as you can see the
Yeah,
deck,
I don't like that either. Right.
yeah, yeah. But when you talk like that, I can see you. So I can see one person. I guess the last person that talked, right? Yeah. So thanks everyone. Welcome to session 3 of the Rising Stars conference, and we this one today is on creating an organizational culture of quality, and as Peter Drucker said, right, culture eats strategy for breakfast, and it's so true in stars. It's, I don't know, arguably, maybe inarguably, right, the most important thing in being good at stars. And when I was thinking through this, I started thinking though, can you be good at stars and not have a culture of quality? Um, and I think maybe you can happen into it, right? But I don't think you can sustain it. I don't think you can be perennially good at stars without a good culture. I think you can, and we've often talked about, even though we hate the way the phrase goes, but kind of the game. If you understand how the math works, right, and where your leverage points are. But then again, I think to understand that you have to have somewhat of a culture of quality. So I think that could be a whole interesting debate all by itself. Um, but inevitably, having a culture of quality is important, right? It's a linchpin to being perennially good. And I know people on this call today who are perennially good and who have that culture, right? And it doesn't matter how good your people are or your processes or technology. If the culture is crap, then you're not gonna, I don't think, get good results, right? So it's super important. And we're not talking about a culture like a friendly, it's not, this is a culture of quality that we're talking about, right? So it's the things that are important for that. That's where our focus is today. As far as agenda, you know the welcome intros, we're going to touch on the conference schedule. We've got 4 sessions, and we'll touch on those, and then we'll kind of go into creating a quality culture, the importance of stars to the organization, the importance of goal setting for stars, and then kind of how leadership ties into this, and some things you can do to help foster a strong stars culture within the organization. And then we'll talk about a couple of upcoming events too, just to make sure you're aware of those. A quick plug on this, just this is, Rising Stars it's a partnership enterprise between, our company, RWC, and Hyperlift. And we started out with a podcast, because we've done a lot of work together, and Mick and I are, we think a lot alike. I think we're well aligned in kind of how we want to approach things. So we started a podcast, and we've had a whole lot of fun doing it, and had a lot of really smart people come on and let us interview them and have a good conversation about some important topics in stars, and kind of unpack those and get behind the curtains. And it's been a whole lot of fun, and we've kind of expanded that to now we have these virtual conferences like this. We actually do our podcast recordings at actual conferences. We've done them at a couple of Rise conferences. We'll be doing it at Masterclass coming up in December. But and hopefully there's more coming, right? But it's all in the vein of sharing thought leadership content, right? Hopefully, being generous with that and just ensuring that connecting people and connecting, best practices. There is a link down here if you are interested in seeing them. All of our videos are on there with all of our guests. We put them all on LinkedIn and we tag our guests. Again, really smart people from some are on the call today, I think, and then a lot of people just across the organization. But we kind of pride ourselves on finding the brightest minds in STARS and then having the most topical conversations, the most relevant, kind of time sensitive, conversations with those people to talk about things going on. Okay, so mentioned that we have 4 sessions. So we're on number 3, right? We've had 2 already. We had a deep dive into basically what you need to do in the first 90 days of 2023 to be good at STARS. Talked a lot about, retention, OEP retention, and CAPS conditioning, as well as, bid strategy, Part D, med adherence, HEDIS, etc. Then on the 3rd, Mick went deep into STARS performance management, leveraging dashboards and leveraging the quality improvement measures and reward factor, and getting really sophisticated about using those to be good at STARS. Today we're going to focus on culture, creating that organizational culture of quality, and then focus entirely on the member experience, the voice of the member, on Thursday, this next one. That's going to be a good one too, and have some guest speakers on that one, some industry experts talking about a voice of the member platform and just ways to leverage capturing the voice of the member from across the whole company, right?
Hey, Rex, I just wanted to let everybody know that I did put in the chat the link to the Rising Stars podcast so that you could click on it and take a look before we send this slide out, these slide decks.
Thanks, Jess. And also on that note, we mentioned these first 2 sessions that we did, right? We did record those and we did put those, after I figured out how to trim them, we put those on that same YouTube page. So they are, if you click on this link, you won't just see our podcast episodes, you'll see these first 2 session recordings as well. They're on there as well. And we'll put these 2 on there when they're, when we get through these as well. Yeah, thanks, Jessica. Okay, as far as creating a culture of quality, we're going to turn this to Luis.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. When I started working with STARS, remember that we used to say that we needed to develop a campaign to create awareness and engagement with the employees. However, I'm pretty sure that nowadays, pretty much all of you understand that your companies have to become STARS-oriented companies. And in order to do that, you need to create and develop a culture instead of just a campaign. So we're going to talk a little bit about the difference between culture and campaign, why one versus the other. But the website defines culture as shared attitudes, values, goals, and practices that characterize an institution or organization. And I believe that when people hear the word culture, they automatically think of the long run, like something that is perpetual, that is pretty much forever, right? But a culture takes time to create. And you need to make your employees embrace that. And they need to be able to reflect that culture in your company, even in their own lives. And I have seen companies who actually do that. We could start mentioning several of those, but for time's sake, I will not get into all of those details, right? However, when it comes to STARS, talking about a culture means that everyone understands that a certain behavior is expected from them all the time and not just sometimes. Also, everybody understands the role, what they contribute to STARS, what they need to do, why it's important. They have a responsibility that is assigned for all of these processes that impact STARS, and accountability is enforced. And we're going to be talking about all of these topics more in detail. We can go to the next slide. Okay, now campaign is defined as a connected series of operations designed to bring about a particular result. Think of advertisement or political campaigns Because, you know, their goal is to make you buy a certain product or to vote, I'm sorry, for a certain person. But the difference with the campaigns is that they are temporary. They can be created, be developed very quickly. People expect them to change every year, and you don't need everybody to be involved or engaged in a campaign to make it successful, which is completely the opposite with a culture. And probably most of the audience here already have some sort of STARS campaign during the year, like Drive to 5, give me 5, let's hit 5, you know, something like that. And that is great. But I see these campaigns as part of the whole culture, of the culture of being a STARS-oriented company, and as a way to reinforce your core values, and not just as an option to create a culture with your staff. And I will pass it over to Rex now so he can discuss what needs to be done to build a great culture in a company.
Yeah, thanks, Luis. Here we go. So this is, this first slide, right, it's from the Culture Code. This is a book that, published about creating organizational cultures, and a lot of great ideas in there, and very relevant to a STARS culture. So you'll see, a few slides in here where we're taking content from that book and applying it to a STARS culture. So this first one, 3 keys to building a STARS culture. One is create a safe space. You might see this at first and think, that's I don't know. It's like, how do you really do that, right? Like, and how important is that really? And I mean, I believe it's super important. We have all of our focus on, a lot of focus on our members today in health equity, and I keep thinking of, a lot of this culture is applying these culture tips. It's applying some of what I think we're trying to do with our members, and trying to do that with our employees, for our teams and our cross-functional partners. But our employees are the people on our teams, and in a STARS organization, right? We have it's a matrix organization. I mean, these people that we're dependent upon, that influence our measures. We don't they typically don't report to us, right? Like, but we need to create safe spaces for them as well, to make them know that every voice needs to be heard, right? Every voice counts. Everyone's voice counts. So, how do we do that? So that's critically important, making people feel like they can speak up, like what they say matters, like if they want to not, they need to understand that they can speak up, and they can bring their opinions to the table, and they can influence the direction of the program. Exemplify vulnerability, right? This is more on the leadership side, right? But how do we, I think this is when real connection happens, and real bonding between team members. And this is, especially in the lines of, think of a committee, right? Or like a STARS operating committee, or even the executive steering committee, but where there are key relationships across the organization. And we need to, I think, not be afraid to be vulnerable. And I think really importantly, establish a purpose, right? Is to, everyone needs something bigger than themselves to go after, right? To be fighting for. And this purpose, I think there's a lot of purpose in what we do, right? In improving the quality of care for our members, and doing that through, creating better environments for our employees, for our team members, for our cross-functional partners. The next one is kind of taking it even a step down, and Jessica and I were talking about a lot about this, and Brene Brown kept coming to mind, right, when we talked about belonging. But belonging, and this is again from the book, The Culture Code, but we have so many buzzwords in the industry now that we're all kind of marching towards. When you think about diversity and inclusion and equity, and belonging. But of all of those, which are all so important, belonging is the only one that really reflects how somebody feels internally, right? The person that we're talking about. Do they feel accepted? Do they feel valued? Do they feel like they're part of the team? Do they feel needed? And I think really importantly, do they feel wanted? So when you think about your key partners across the organization that are helping you succeed in STARS, that you are dependent upon, I mean, I think I would ask you the question, right? Do they feel valued? Do they feel wanted, right? As part of the team? Because I think that can go a long way towards creating cohesion within a team. So there are three things on here as far as creating a sense of belonging within a STARS organization. Number one is we are close. So and then I'll just bring them all up, right? We are safe and we share a future. So if you think about these and the teams that are again helping us to achieve our organization's goals, right? So some things you can do here around we are close are, even like having, and Luis and I were talking through this recently about, the importance of kind of creating this sense of closeness. You can do it through back channel communications, right? So when let's say we're having a big meeting like this meeting right now, and if I wasn't presenting, I could be sending instant messages through Teams to, some of my team, individual ones, right, to kind of bounce ideas off them about what's being said, right, or texting with your team or with your partners during some kind of big meeting to have, again, kind of this back channel communications, right, where you're creating closeness. Also safe. I mean, is it safe to speak up? I mean, is there fear of any kind of retaliation, or just someone not wanting you to speak up or not allowing you to speak up or dismissing what you say immediately? Create that safe space where they can speak up. And then lastly, we share a future. So I think when you're thinking about a team, a cross-functional team, and having a sense of belonging when you're marching towards a common goal, I think how do you all feel like you're in it for the long haul, right? Are you making them feel like you're all in it for the long haul, like you're with them for the long haul? Is there a stake in the ground in the future of something we're marching towards, whether it's 4 stars or 5 stars or something else, right? That we're sharing.
Rex, on the topic of Brene Brown, and she's, I think, known predominantly for one of her TED Talks that was called The Power of Vulnerability. You guys can just Google it, or I'll put it in the chat for you. And it's one of the top 5 most viewed TED Talks in the world. It has over 50 million views. It's really great. It's applicable to both your personal and professional life, but she has a really great quote, and she says, "No vulnerability, no creativity, no tolerance for failure, no innovation. It's that simple. If you're not willing to fail, you can't innovate. If you're not willing to build a vulnerable culture, you can't create." And I really encourage you guys to look into her. You can just do Google searches and get a lot of great content for your teams, for yourself. I think she's a really great research professor that can add a lot of value.
She really is. Yeah, thanks, Jessica. And one of the things she says that I always she says a few things that I can always keep in mind. But one, she says, when you're communicating with someone, right? And I think about this when you're communicating with your team or your partners or even your vendors or whatever, right? But clear is kind and unclear is unkind, right? So just the importance of being crystal clear in what you're asking for. And I think about this when you're asking for, your executive steering committee for a funding request too. I mean, I guess in that sense, unclear is unkind to you because it means you're not going to get it, right? But the clearer you can be in communicating something to someone, what you're looking, especially if you're making a request, right? If it's something you're looking for, there's definitely a lot of nuggets of wisdom. I'll pause here because these two slides they're pretty high level, right? And they're maybe not as, I don't know, tactical. Look, we don't see these in like STARS presentations typically, right? But I really wanted to include them because of, I think when you're building a culture, I think these things, safety and closeness and things like that, vulnerability, right, are so important based on a million things I've read and things I've seen, either at plans I've worked for or clients I've worked with, right? But I kind of want to open this up just for a second. I mean, when you hear these two slides, talk about belonging, right, and safety, does that resonate at all, or do you think that's kind of not where your focus, where your problem lies? Anyone have thoughts on that?
Yeah, good afternoon. This is Leon Lead with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Arizona. And this is 100% in my mind, having been a part of trying to build some cultures within large health plans over the last several years, specifically focused on member experience. This to me makes a ton of sense. Simply from the perspective of there are so many integral components and teams within health plan organizations, and often sometimes known as operations, if you will, that may not be specifically member facing, that drive significant impact on member experience. And so helping folks kind of connect those dots in what they do every day and how it impacts member experience, I think is an opportunity for us not only to recognize some similarity, but also to create some space where folks can see that the impact that they're making is incredibly powerful, number one, and number two, there's more that they can do just by sharing ideas to manufacture, or to potentially even recommend things to improve efficiencies, for instance, that have direct impact on member experience. However, a person may not be viewing it as direct impact, if you will.
That's great, Leon. Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, I think, I'm as guilty as anyone probably in the past of, when I think of like a culture of quality, I think so much about like a culture of accountability, right? And it's all about, are we measuring how people are performing, and are we holding them accountable, and are we right? I mean, I know, having dashboards with their names on them showing how their project is performing, and just to create accountability. And I think that's there's so much to do before you ever reach that a point of maybe needing to do that, right? As far as this kind of stuff, and like you were talking about, Leon, like creating just kind of creating closeness, right, and connection, right, with those cross-functional partners. I think the ability, and we'll get into more of this later, but yeah, how we communicate with those people, how we make them feel when we're talking to them, et cetera, right? We influence this culture, right? The STARS culture is not something that we just typically walk into and are swallowed up by, but we, in our quality roles, right, we influence that culture with everything we do, and we have the ability to influence it. So yeah, thanks for your feedback. Luis, I'll turn it back to you for this.
Sure, thank you. I will try to start connecting some dots from the conversation that we're having with Rex there. Just wanted to present to you here an exercise, if we can call it like that we did with a client some time ago this year. This client is not a health plan, it is a home health agency, but they also have to do a CAHPS survey. And they call us because one of the questions, which was something along the lines of how likely are you to recommend this company to your family or friends, they had several options, and one of those options was definitely yes. But they did not perform very well in that question. So we were talking about, okay, how do we make people to answer definitely yes? And we said, well, we have to make the employees, the staff, demonstrate that they definitely care about these members. And we say, so this is what we're going to base our culture on. So the culture, the STARS culture for them, if we want to call it like that, is we definitely care. And what you see here in this exercise, actually 3 things. So we had a culture, we definitely care. We did a campaign, which we say it's part of your culture. And we also did a training, which we're going to be talking about. So first, we define the culture. So the culture here, we want to make people understand that we definitely care about them. Then we also wanted to make it relevant for everyone. So we did a training for everybody in the staff, like top management, middle management, everybody had to take this training. And we were laying out some of the things that we need them to understand. Like, we believe that you definitely care. We believe you're already committed with every patient, every visit, every day. What patients say about our care, it's important. You have to take that into account. And we have a goal here, which is to clearly communicate our commitment to care of excellence. So again, the culture for this company is to show members that they definitely care. We also work on providing a guideline. In this case, they wanted to call it a pledge. And this pledge specifically for this company and for their employees was something that they actually wanted to memorize and make sure that they were showing and doing every time they were interacting with the members. So for example, this pledge says something like, I pledge to definitely treat you with courtesy and respect. I pledge to definitely keep you informed and up to date about your schedule and care. I pledge to definitely help you safely stay wherever you call home. I pledge to work tirelessly to meet your unique needs. Definitely yes. And then finally, we wanted to make sure that everybody is accountable for that. So we were telling them, look, this is what you're expected to do. So you have to believe it, you have to speak it, you have to live it. So again, it's just a small example of how you can start creating that culture within your company. Anybody has any questions or comments so far? We can go into the next slide. You're mute, Rex.
Rex, we can't hear you.
You're mute.
Sorry. I was giving you some good props there, Luis. I was saying I got to sit in the background while Luis was doing this with doing this project with this client and watch how excited the client was, and when they would have these ideas and come up with these, the pledge and how it really cascaded across the whole organization pretty quickly. They had the marketing team engaged, of course. And anyway, it was a really fun project. I'm so glad we got to be part of that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there you go.
So we were talking about the importance of doing a training. Like I mentioned before, you want to do a training about STARS for everybody in your company. So again, I'm talking top management, middle management, field workers. Everybody in your company should be taking a training. And some of the topics that you will cover in that training is, for example, what is STARS? So you want to make sure that your new staff understand what STARS is, but you also want to make this as a refresher for your 16 staff. So every year, everybody should be taking a training. Usually, I remember when I was working with the health plan, we will do this through the trainings that compliance will ask us to take every year. And you also want to make sure that every year you are informing people about the changes for STARS, like this or that measure is coming in, or the weights of the measures is changing, etc., etc. Another topic that you want to inform your people and you want to be clear, you want to be transparent, is the financial implications and the importance of STARS. Jessica will talk about this in detail later on. So the only thing I will mention, some of the topics that you want to let people know about is what the rebate and the QPP is, what the high and low performance icons mean for the company, and of course, contract termination. Like, it's important to tell people, look, yes, this is about money, but if we don't make the STARS, according to CMS, like if we get less than 3 stars for 3 years in a row, our contract is going to be terminated and nobody's going to have a job. So I think it's important. I know it's not a pleasant conversation, but people need to understand that. You also want to engage with their staff and make them understand why they are important for stars. So you're probably going to have to personalize and tailor this to the different areas like customer service or clinical or pharmacy. You want to let them know why they are important, how they impact stars, and you want to make it personal. So you can do some sort of role plays, or you can bring some exercise and examples. And there's some also later on in the presentation, so I'm not going to get into that one right now. And then finally, in that training, you want to address with the staff in the company, how can stars be improved? You always want to request feedback. I have learned as a previous stars leaders for a health plan, people who have been in that company longer than me have a lot of experience, they have a lot of ideas, and they understand how stars can be improved. So some of the things that you can do is, for example, do an idea contest. You say, we're going to request every department to submit an idea, a project, how we can improve stars, and you can make a contest, right? You can make it a funny, and you can give them some prize, like a pizza party, or if you want to do like a metallic prize, whatever you want. But I think it's important to engage them as well. I remember something that we did a couple of years ago was actually having a coffee break with stars. We will actually invite people from the customer service department to sit down with us for 30 minutes, 1 hour, depending, and just talk to us. Just let us know the things that were bothering them, things that they believe could be improved in order to improve the performance. And sometimes they will tell you things that they may not feel too comfortable telling their own supervisors. So you can use that space, like Rex was mentioning before, like help make it a safe space for people to bring their ideas to you, their concerns, and take it into account and look for a way to solve those issues. Questions, comments here? Go to the next slide. You also want to make sure that your leadership, your top management is engaged. And I think there's 3 ways to do that. The first one at the bottom, stars, being a 4 stars plan has to be one of your top 3 goals in the company. So you want your leadership announcing this to everybody. They are the ones who need to tell the company has a goal of being 4 stars. Each department has a goal of improving the measures that they can impact. And every individual in their evaluation should also have a goal related to stars. So there are ways to do that. You have to make sure that somehow that is involved in there. We can provide some examples later, but that's something that we did. Again, working at a health plan, we make sure that the goals were at the company level, at the department level, and at the individual level. The second level will be communication. I believe that is really, really powerful when your top leadership, CEO, COO, senior vice presidents communicate directly with the company and they tell everybody, this is our goal. This is what we need to do. We need you to do this. This is what is expected of you. These are things that you can work with your marketing department and make sure that their emails coming from your top management. They can do a video to send those messages, to congratulate people when they're doing something good, to remind people of the importance of stars. When the CAP service are coming, when the star season is coming, when the annual enrollment period is coming, and also the rallies. Every kind of situation where your top management can actually interact face to face with the employees and just congratulate them, just give that hopeful word for them and encourage them and give them some motivation to keep going and reach our goals is going to have a tremendous impact. And then finally, you need your leadership to provide you ongoing support. They have to make sure that everybody is accountable and they want to request proof of that accountability and that people is doing what they're expected to do. You want to ask them to have those governance meetings every month to discuss the progress of your projects and to discuss if you need any additional support. And they want to make sure that they understand what resources you need in order to achieve your goals. Questions or comments here? Accountability, and again, we're going to go into a lot more detail later on, but there are 5 things that I'm thinking about accountability. As a stars leader, you want to identify who are the measure owners. You want to set measure goals. You want to request a work plan from those measure owners based on the goals that you have discussed and agreed upon with them. You want to have monthly working meetings with these business owners and understand what they're doing, understand what they need, so you can take all of that feedback and help them tear down any barriers that they are encountering. And you also want to engage with your leadership every month to talk to them about the progress in the performance and to discuss any additional support or resources that you may need. Questions or comments here?
Here, I'm imagining,
Yeah.
Luis, I'm imagining 1B of, so 1A is identify measure owners, 1B is create safe space and sense of belonging for all the measure owners, right? And then set measure goals for plus work plans. Yeah. I like this. Any questions, anyone?
And then finally, how to engage your staff. And again, when I say staff, is everybody. So you want to keep ongoing trainings, like we mentioned before, every year for the new people, refreshers for the existing staff, and you want to let them know about any changes. You want to keep fostering that top quality customer service. And customer service, I think I have mentioned this before, customer service is not just the actual customer service representative. Everybody in the company is actually customer service. Everybody who has some sort of interaction with a member is customer service, because when those members answer the CAP survey, they're going to remember that they talked to somebody in the company or that they requested help from somebody, they interacted with somebody. They're not going to remember if they're a doctor, if they're the janitor, if they're customer service. They just know that they talked to somebody from the company. So that is going to influence their perception of the service that they are receiving. You want to constantly discuss performance with the different areas and with your teams as well, and make sure that you are on track based on the goals that you have set for everybody. And if you are not on track, then you need to discuss what needs to be done, what resources need to be implemented, what else you can do to get there. And make sure that you're also working with your team, doing some building exercises. I mentioned that Rex and Jessica are going to mention this later on, so I'm going to leave that to them. You also want to make sure that you recognize your staff. If they're doing something right, if they're doing something that is impacting stars positively, you can do that. One thing will be, for example, you can establish an evaluation committee, and every quarter you are going to receive evaluations and nominations. I'm sorry, that's the word I'm looking for. You're going to receive nominations from different areas for somebody who has done something positively for stars. And you could, for example, give them a plaque, you could give them a gift card, you could give them 1 day off, and make sure that everybody in the company knows that that person did something that impacted stars positively. And the last one, and you might laugh when I say this, do tons of goodies, as many goodies as you can. Like, that is really great. Again, back when I was working with the health plan, we had polo shirts with the stars logo that we designed, and we gave one to everybody. People loved that. Even one year we were doing cookies in with the shape of a star and with a stick like a lollipop, and everybody was liking that, and they were expecting that for the next year. They were asking us for more. So goodies is always a good way to engage people. And to get them in the mood of saying, hey, they gave me something, and to be identified with that culture. If you remember when I was talking about the client that we were working before with the We Definitely Care, I never got to see the polo shirts, but they told me and they showed me more or less what will look like. They actually had polo shirts for everybody with the pledge saying We Definitely Care. So whenever they go into the member's house, the members are going to see that, like, We Definitely Care. So again, I think, doing the staff recognition, doing the goodies is always going to be a good idea. Questions or comments here?
I would jump in and say that I think recognition, right, is, I think right now, near the end of the year is the best time to do that, in my experience, because it's kind of the natural time when there's closure, when the year is ending. We're starting a new year. So many people are setting goals for next year. We're setting goals for stars for next year, starting in January. As we kind of are closing out this year, I wouldn't wait until January. You can, I guess, but I think there's something I think there's something good about doing that in like December, right before people go off for Christmas break and holiday break. And like, I think if you're not thinking about this, then I would. I think the recognition and the goodies both, right, if possible.
Yeah, absolutely, Rex. I know one of the things that I saw that was really effective is recognizing care managers for the gaps that they've closed. And, you know, executive leadership, or at least the quality leader, would send out messages on a monthly basis and call out like top performing care managers. And the care managers really, really appreciated that and really enjoyed the fact that they could see what they were doing actually was having impact, because what this leader would do is they'd outline, you know, this care manager closed 14 of these care gaps, or, you know, helped to close these gaps, got these members to make appointments and go get their mammograms, and that resulted in an increase of, you know, this in our measure. And so having that sense, that understanding of how they're contributing, even if it's just a little bit here and there, was really, really impactful for that organization. Thanks, Luis. Oh, go ahead, Rex.
But just one more thing on that, you're making me think too. But you know, when I was leading STARS, we had one year where we struggled. We struggled every year, but we performed well almost every year. This one year we didn't. We struggled and we performed poorly, right? And you know, one of our executives kind of pulled me aside and said, "Hey, his guidance was, and this was super helpful for me, was to, you know, let's go back and replay the tape, right? Let's play Monday morning quarterback, and let's go back and let's look at how we performed on all these. What activities did we do? What could we have done differently to change it? But also, you know, what did we achieve through people's accomplishments, which is what you're saying, Jess. Like, if the care management team is one example, you know, how many gaps did they close, and how much did they contribute to the success that we did have, or the customer service team, or right, the provider engagement team, or whoever. I think it's really important to recognize and to just kind of go back and to really study, right, how we performed. Right now is the time, because the scores just came out in October, right? So it's still fresh.
Yeah, absolutely. So now we want to hear from some of you on culture, and Josh Edwards from Devoted Health is going to give us some insights into one thing done at Devoted that's been effective in establishing or driving a culture of quality. Josh, we'll give you a couple minutes to talk about that.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me. And this has been great, and I'm realizing that a lot of what I prepared has already been touched on, so it's just going to kind of help reinforce some of the topics. The thing that I chose was, we have a corporate scorecard here of clearly defined metrics, and we reported out to our board. And there are 3 elements that I want to touch on that we've heard mostly already. So Rex spoke about clarity, and I know at other points in my life, previous to healthcare in the olden days, sometimes success wasn't agreed upon and it wasn't clear, and it wouldn't be visible to the end of the project. You reconcile a budget, you have a client meeting, and the challenge is, if one of those is good and one of those is bad, all of a sudden, is that success? That lack of clarity turns us into teams. Instead of teams, we're groups of individuals with different agendas, and there's no shared purpose. So clarity really brings alignment. And Luis spoke about accountability. And on our scorecard, if a group of the measures, star rating measures like clinical or CAHPS, isn't performing to goal, we can't hide it. You know, we can't make a fancy slideshow that highlights the good things and sweeps the bad things away. It's out in the open. And so it can be scary, but then we also talked about that safe space, but it makes us accountable. And it also lets us advocate for resources. You know, instead of having to build a case and get proof, we can say, we need help here because we are not meeting this metric. And then lastly, I think this is hopefully this is common for everybody. I know this is what I do. You know, we get our star ratings for a contract. The first thing I do, I look at the overall rating, and then I'm like, okay, what measure is at 1 star? What measures at 2 stars? I only focus on the places that need improvement. And by having this scorecard, it really allows us to pause and celebrate the successes, celebrate when we hit goals, celebrate when we exceeded a goal. And celebrating those wins, kind of like what Luis is saying with the swag and everything, is really important in this line of work. So I know we probably all have different elements of scorecards, but I hope if you don't have one, you can kind of look into it, or if you do have one, this resonates with you.
Yeah, Josh, I think you hit on something really, really important too. And thank you for sharing. Not being too short-sighted to just stop and see what did we do really well. We're always looking on where we can improve, especially we're all in quality improvement, right? And I think that is really important to stop and just, what did they say, smell the roses, right? And make sure that we are recognizing the hard work that went into it, because even if we didn't perform as expected or hit that 4-star or better mark, there was incremental improvement, or, you know, this measure jumped 3 stars, or there's always a reason to celebrate. That doesn't mean the work is done, even if you're at, you know, 4 stars. But that's really great points. Thank you for your insights.
It was, and I'll just say, and thanks, Josh, because you know, Devoted clearly doing some things right. I mean, they've, I think, 100% of their members in 4-star plans this year, and had at least one contract in its first ever rating, you know, hit 5 stars. So pretty rare, pretty unheard of, and definitely signs of good things going on there. So yeah, thanks, Josh, for sharing that.
Awesome. Okay, so the importance of stars to the organization. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. So this is honestly one of the most important conversations that I ever have with health plans and their leaders and cross-functional departments that contribute to stars. It's critical for every department and leader of the organization to understand their role within the STARS program, as we've been saying, and then the impact that it has on the organization. And for many of you as STARS leaders, you know how hard that can be to gain buy-in into the quality is everyone's responsibility mentality. And, you know, you get the smirks and everything when you say that. So these are some great talking points that you can leverage within your organization to do just that. So first, member health outcomes. Truly the reason we are all here and entered into the healthcare field, hopefully, and making a positive difference in our members' lives, right? Members who get their screenings and they manage their chronic conditions are generally healthier, and that is what we want to see. But also, it's generally less expensive then, right? And let's face it, without the revenue, we can't continue to serve the members and the community the way in which we want to, which leads up to the next category, top and bottom line results and the plan revenue. As you are all very aware, there are significant dollars attached to the STARS program in terms of quality bonus payments and rebates. And Rex created a great slide breaking out the QBP and rebate percent impacts for a plan with 100,000 members, and then outlined the difference between a 3-star performance all the way up to a 5-star performance. And I think many of you who attended our STARS Council meeting saw this last month, but the difference with all other factors controlled was $66 million. And that's a lot of money you can be putting into supplemental benefits for your members. And even if all else fails when educating your organization on the importance of STARS, plan revenue is a very, very compelling reason to want to or even have to establish a STARS culture. And so that ties very nicely into the next category, which is business development. If you want to grow your Medicare product from a benefits perspective or expand into different counties, your performance on STARS significantly impacts this. You may have seen in the news lately, like last month, that some large payers have been barred by CMS from expanding their footprint in certain states due to consistent low performance in STARS. And additionally, I've been part of Medicaid RFPs and entering into the marketplace lines of business in dozens of states. And the state agencies frequently ask for Medicare Stars performance data overall and for specific measures as leading indicators and considerations of how you're going to perform on these other lines of business when considering your RFP. So really critical from a business development perspective. Compliance and regulatory, this category should come as no surprise. You're going to be required to field a CAHPS and HOS survey, as well as report out on HEDIS measures, go through HEDIS chart chase season, all of which requires support and have dependencies on cross-functional departments across the organization. And then finally, reputation. Your performance on STARS will be publicly reported and visible in the Medicare Plan Finder. And hopefully no one on here has ever had to or will ever have to experience the consistently low performer shame game CMS deploys annually. But if you have a contract that has performed below 3 stars for at least 3 years in a row, CMS will place a low performer icon in the Medicare Plan Finder. You can see it up there. It's that little red upside down triangle with an exclamation point in it that literally warns plans of your low ratings. And if that isn't enough, they also send what's called a poor performer notice to all of your members in that contract that all but says that you need to disenroll from this plan, and here's how you do it. I can send you a copy if you've never seen one. Hopefully you never have to see one, but it is a very scary letter. If I were a member and I got that, I'd be like, I need to disenroll from this plan right away. And then I'll go enroll into a 5-star plan. Right? So performance below 3 stars for at least 3 years in a row can also lead to CMS terminating your contract. But at the very least, you're going to be on a corrective action for the first and second year of low performance. On the flip side, for those of you who perform at a 5-star level, CMS celebrates that and puts the following notation in the Medicare Plan Finder. You can see there highlighted in yellow. And then I'll end the slide on this. This category, along with the plan revenue, are very effective talking points with your executive leadership on why they need to prioritize stars and help you create a culture of stars or a culture of quality if you have multiple lines of business. And a lot of times I hear from health plan quality leaders that they have a hard time getting that buy-in. These are those motivators that your executive staff do need if you're having, a harder time with some of the other categories that we talked about. Usually anything regulatory or anything related to finance and sanctions really pique their attention, and they don't want to go down that road. So I'd encourage you to have those types of conversations. Next slide. Okay, so with all that said, what we've seen over and over again in organizations who achieve a 4-star better performance is, and I really want to highlight this, an organization-wide shared vision and a sense of accountability for stars. And we can break this down into a few categories seen here. First, understanding and communicating there are significant dependencies that exist across several stakeholders in your organization in order for improvement efforts to be successful and then sustained. Second, your organization's ability to achieve improvement is dependent on a shared understanding of what it takes to get to a 4 or better stars performance. As the stars leader or the QI leader, as most of you are, you understand you have significant influence and responsibility in educating the organization on what it will take to get to goal. And then lastly, understanding the needs to translate into responsibility and accountability across the organization. So stars is everyone's responsibility. It's not just the stars team or the quality department. And stars goals and KPIs for all stakeholders, and I truly mean all stakeholders, that align with the organization's overall stars strategy and goals is critical to success. And I know this is a very hard sell to get buy-in for, and that's why it's critical to make sure everybody understands the categories we went over in the previous slide. What is at stake? And also for executive leadership to set the expectation that stars is a priority, one of the organization's top 3 goals, like Luis mentioned earlier, and then require that everyone has their own department and individual SCARS goals. I'm going to stop there. Any questions on that before we kind of talk about how to do that? Okay. So now we'd like to take some time reviewing how to do that, and who better to go over how to conduct this organization-wide goal setting than Mick Toomey, CEO of Hyperlift.
All right, thank you, Jess. I will we'll share my screen here real quick. Okay, so I think this has been really interesting listening to the detail of all of these slides and all of the discussion around it, and seeing really how a lot of this comes together in this target setting process. For those of you who joined us last week or 2 weeks ago, we went through this in pretty significant detail, and this will be a little bit different, coming from a slightly different lens, really around a lot of the topics that we've been touching on today. As I was listening, I heard Rex talking about creating a sense of team, marching toward a similar goal, and then there's the whole creating this close, kind of safe, connected area. None of this happens on accident, right? I mean, these are things that you have to put thought in. You have to be diligent and really put effort into achieving this. When I think about it, and we try to fold a lot of this into our typical annual process, but it's really about inclusion. How can you be inclusive? How do you involve people from across the organization and make them feel like they're actually a part of it? A lot of this, like the target setting specifically, this is not being done to them, it's being done with them. And then, Jess was talking about, making sure that everything is aligned, and Josh touched on this too, this alignment from start to finish, but across the organization, that we're all going after the same things, and the activities that we're taking are all moving towards this consistent, similar goal and target. And so when we think about this target setting process really can be a real opportunity for you to, from a tactical perspective, achieve a lot of these concepts that we've been talking about today. And again, it's really all about being inclusive and showing that, we as a STARS team are doing things that are going to enable success, with the rest of the organization. And so we've got a process that we typically go through that we'll talk about, and what we believe is the right way to establish meaningful targets that both create accountability from the measure owners, but also do create that alignment and really take you from your overall strategic objectives all the way down to a measure target. And so, how do we start this? There's situational factors that are going to be unique to each contract that really should inform how you approach the target setting process. Maybe not the process, but the target setting results. And so when we first start out, we're looking at understanding what is unique with your contract that should help us figure out where we want to focus, right? When we can't boil the ocean. So we've got to identify where are our biggest bangs for the buck, and where do we get the biggest payoff for the improvement initiatives that we're going to push out. And so there are a few topics that we would suggest that you consider as you're going after kind of what are we looking at from a strategic perspective. And, maybe we'll go from the basic to the more complex, but at the highest level, cut point proximity. Yes, the cut points, will continue to most likely increase, as we go from year to year, but understanding where each one of your measures fell last year, the most recent data you can look at, can give you some insight into maybe which measures, if we don't improve as much as we could and the industry outperforms us, where could we lose a star rating? Alternatively, if we put a little bit of effort here, where were we close to the upper cut point? Meaning, if we put a little extra effort onto this one, maybe we could bump this up to the next star rating. So a lot of that is really to understand just kind of quick hit risk and opportunity measures that you might want to pay special attention to when you're going through that target setting process. The other one is peer analysis. We look at peers from a number of different ways, and I've talked with a lot of you about this stuff, and there are all kinds of different lenses that you can look at around peer analysis. I would say the place where we typically start, kind of two ways. One, let's look at anyone in our region, because if we are examining our performance against other contracts that have the same kind of demographic for their members, then if there are places that we are noticeably underperforming, that really tells us that we've got something going on internally that we could address. And if we were able to address that, we could maybe start to see some markedly improved results. The other one we like to look at is, we call it aspirational. So let's say that your contract got a 3.5 last year. We might broaden it and get out of our region, but let's look at every plan that scored a 4-star last year. And so just, half a star above where you were. And when you broaden it out and look really across the industry, it really helps to see, are there areas that are differentiated in your performance versus, the average 1/2 star above you player. And so that also can help highlight areas that would be smart to target so that you can begin to close some of those gaps that really differentiate you from the higher performing plans, just one level up. QI and reward factor. I think the amount of time and effort that contracts place on this really varies, but these are really important STARS performance levers that you have the opportunity to pull. But it is, understanding which ones are right for your contract is a valuable exercise to go through. If you are, let's say, 3.4 or below, you might really start looking at QI as a major focus in your target setting process. What are those likely QI significant improvement thresholds that you'd have to achieve? Because very often they're going to be less than what you have to do to get to that next star rating. So those are some interim goals that you might want to go after, because if you can get 5 stars on those 2 5 weighted measures, it's a real opportunity. If you are, let's say, 4.1-ish and above, then we'd recommend putting a much bigger focus on the reward factor side, taking a look at where you've been historically. Where did you fall for the 65 and 85th percentiles on mean, or the 30th and 70th for the variance? Were you close to getting to that next level? There are 40 basis points that you can add to your score there, and understanding the detailed measures and how they impact that 40 basis point bump can be really powerful. So that's another one that is definitely worth consideration, and worth consideration as the year goes on. How are we looking? Where are we looking relative to those thresholds? How does that change our focus for the balance of the year? And frankly, if you're between that 3.4, 4.1-ish range, then it's probably a hybrid approach. And you really need to look at both of those things, because if you're going to end up below 4 stars, you have to use QI. But if you do get above those thresholds, reward factor can really be a big benefit to you. And the final piece that we look at on this, and it's kind of new this year, is the Tukey side. I think everybody's got differing levels of understanding at the nuanced level of what Tukey's going to do. But if you can go in and do a risk assessment for your contract, look at STARS 2023. Any measure that you scored a 2 or a 3 on, put some focus there. Any measure that you got a 4 or a 5, but you're kind of on that lower end of the cut point range, you're within a couple of points of the cut points at a 4 to 5 star measure, those are things you might want to look at. And all of this is kind of getting a sense of how this might influence the ultimate target setting strategy. And coming out of that, you'll have a good understanding of where you should focus, where you might want to start grouping some measures to put extra emphasis there. And we recommend coming in with a starting point of potential targets that you might consider, which moves right into being a collaborative resource. And this plays right into everything that we've talked about, around creating this safe space. And I think doing some of these sessions like we're talking about, and I've got one more slide to show you after this, but creating this safe space that shows the measure owners that essentially you have their best interest at heart. You've gone through the effort to create something that makes sense. It's relatively simple, that provides a whole lot of information that enables them to make very sound decisions from a realistic standpoint, to set targets. It's not, what do we need to hit 4 stars, 5 stars? It is about what makes sense. What kind of movement can we realistically expect? How do we get there? And it's about including all of these different data points that will enable them to make a sound decision and ultimately create measure targets that make sense. They're aligned with the overall strategic objectives, but also are things that they can feel good about and are accountable to. And one note, we see this a fair amount. If we would recommend against setting targets that are going after certain star ratings. Realistically, you should be looking at the scores and understanding what kind of movement is possible based on your level of performance and setting targets based on that. Because if you set, it's like, well, we have to get to 4 stars. Well, if the numbers tell you you're probably not, then all you're going to be looking at on your scorecards, as Josh mentioned, are red numbers, all year long. We don't want that. We want to be able to build each other up. We want to understand what it's actually going to take and be realistic. Because if we need to move harder in other areas that it's actually feasible, that's what we want to understand. Next piece that we like to look at in these is barriers to improvement. What are these things? What are the things that the measure owners, as Luis identified, you've got to identify those measure owners, but they're on the ground and understand what's in the way of them demonstrating improved performance on a sustainable basis. So what are those things that are in the way? How do we address them? Can we make a business case to go after some resources to improve that? Could be just internal process improvements, could be new technology, new vendors, a lot of different things. But if you come in with some leading practice information or people who are really experts in that area, could be a good way to help facilitate some of that discussion. And so coming out of all of this, it's a really productive process, because when you end, you have a group of measure owners that actually feel included. They feel like they were participative in this process. They got to ultimately assign the values for each of the performance targets, which means now once you're out in your scorecarding process and looking at performance every month, you're looking at numbers that everybody is aligned on and makes sense, again, from the measure level all the way up to the strategic objectives for the contract itself. Any questions on this before I move to our execution slide? Okay. And so how do you execute on this target setting? So we've done, I'll share our process with you. And typically when we're going through this, we do a 1 hour facilitated session with each of the measure owners. The purpose on this, again, is to build that sense of inclusion, that sense of participation through all of this, because we want them to feel supported. We want them to feel that they are in a safe environment. And part of the way we do that is bringing in a lot of information that is relevant to support them in the target setting process. Let's look at a realistic measure movement analysis. What kind of movement can we expect based on your level of performance? And to me, this is a really key element, because you can get down to what is possible and allows you to understand where there are real opportunities for you to really move the needle from a star ratings perspective. We always suggest coming in with a set of starting point targets. It's always easier to change something than to come up with something brand new, kind of blank slate. So we like to go through the analysis at the beginning, see what makes sense from a contract overall perspective, and at least have a standpoint on what makes sense. And then in these sessions, these are hour-long sessions with each of the measure set owners, and you have the opportunity to tweak things, adjust things, and really hone in on what the measure owners believe is possible, what the data suggests is possible, and from there, have a really solid starting point to go after performance management for the rest of the year. And just some other things that we like to include, the forecasted cut point proximity. If you can understand where these targets exist right now relative to the upper forecasted cut point or the lower, gives you a sense for, how much at risk are we if we don't hit this exactly, or, if we can really stretch and get above it, can we get to an even higher star rating? Trend performance is always good to look at. Again, give you an understanding of kind of where you've been, maybe also combined with the star rating so you can see what's happening in the industry as well as just your performance. We always look at the QI thresholds. Again, depending on where your contract is performing, QI can be a major opportunity for you. So again, this isn't going to drive everything, but at least having visibility into that can be really helpful. And so overall, there are a lot of pieces of information that we could include on this. And, one of the things that I think Luis or Josh or maybe Rex was talking about earlier was about involving them in a, collaborative performance improvement initiative and getting the people on the ground to actually talk. And one of the things that we talk about a lot with Rex and his team are around CAPS, and actually having sessions where you can go through and look at the questions that exist and understand, share with everybody. Let's go through this, take this together and talk about what are we doing that is maybe negatively or could be negatively impacting the scores we hear. Because a lot of times people know CAPS, but don't necessarily know all of the questions that go into it. And having a session like that, again, builds the knowledge of your team, but also creates excitement and a feeling of inclusion because they're being asked, about what kind of things are you guys seeing on the ground that we could do to improve things. So that's it. And happy to answer any questions or just pass the baton here.
Thanks so much, Nick. Oh, there you go. Thanks, Nick.
Yeah, thanks, Nick.
All right, so done there that has been effective in establishing or driving a culture of quality. Diana?
Hi there. Good afternoon, everybody. It's really interesting, as someone else said earlier, the things that we're identifying here. For us, most definitely, leadership engagement has proven to be quite successful. It didn't happen overnight, but as time went on, getting that buy-in from the top and seeing how that engagement and energy that's produced from that buy-in and that support that's trickled down to the department level has made a huge impact. And then when you get into the department level, something that for us, we have created that safe environment, that place where individuals in the different department areas feel like they can share, that it's shared knowledge space. It's a place to be innovative, to be creative, to be accountable for what they do, but not to be afraid to share ideas, share where they see we can kind of go forward with an idea, with something that they've kind of contemplated or saw firsthand. And so I think for us, really making sure that that environment to see that we all make an impact on stars is pivotal for us. And then ultimately that we all share the win. It was each of us who put in something, whether it was an idea, whether it was just sweat, tears, everything, but we did this as a group, and I think that has established a culture here where it brings people to be accountable. It brings them to want to share their ideas, and you have that buy-in and that spirit of we're in this together.
Thanks, Diana.
Absolutely.
Really well said.
Go ahead,
No, thanks, Diana. Really well said. I mean, another 5-star plan, right? Doing things right, and has worked so hard for so many years, and it pays off, right? You don't do this overnight, right? Typically, and these foundations take a long time to build and foster and nurture, and you guys have done it as well as anyone. So kudos and thanks for sharing that. Jess, I keep going, right? Did you have anything else?
No, I was just gonna, transition into a really important topic, leadership in STARS culture, and you're gonna kick us off.
Perfect. So we've got like 13 minutes, a few slides here. I'll make the main points here. This pretty fascinating. It's called the spaghetti noodle exercise. If we were in a room, I'd ask you to raise your hands if you've heard of it, but I won't do that now. But okay, so imagine this, right? There's two groups. One's composed of business school students. So think of like, Harvard MBA students, right? And then the other is kindergartners, and they have the same challenge. We give them each some uncooked spaghetti, some tape, some string, and one regular sized big marshmallow, right? And the only rule is the marshmallow's got to end up on top of the tower. And I think they each had 18 minutes to complete this exercise, right? See who can make the tallest tower with the marshmallow on top. So who would you bet on to win, right? The business school students or the kindergartners? Well, the kindergartners won, and the difference lay in their group dynamic. And this is where I think it's so relevant for STARS, because while the business students, right, you see them down here, were rational and intelligent, obviously, right, like highly educated, had probably studied teamwork and the whole 9 yards, right? But they focused too much on who should take charge, who should lead the group, and how to divide the tasks. And does that sound familiar? Anyone, right? When we're trying to get engagement across the organization, and or trying to make a decision, or trying to launch a program, right? But the kindergartners, on the other hand, focused on the problem. They went straight to work building the tower, with really short bursts of, like, their communication back and forth was like, here, use this, here, like that was it, right? Like, but they all jumped in together, and they built the tower, and they won more often than not when they were competing against business school students. And I just think that's incredibly insightful and inspiring to how we should be making decisions more quickly, jumping right in. Like, how many times have we delayed a decision for so long because we need more data? Somebody requires more data to back it up, to really justify it, or wanting the right person to be accountable, right? And when if we just jumped in, we would probably be a lot better off. And then this is really, when we think about STARS culture, it's created by and it's reflected in a few things here I wanted to share. So one is how the STARS leader communicates with and teaches and equips his or her team. I think we're using STARS because this is mainly a STARS focused conference, right? But this could really go across any big project or anything, right? Or line of business or program. But how the STARS leader communicates with their team, how they teach their team, how they equip their team, it's not only that not only reflects the way the culture is in the organization, but that STARS leader can create the culture in the organization by how they do this, right? Same thing with how the STARS team communicates with, teaches, and equips its partners and measure owners, right? You can say, hey, our culture is that we don't have a culture of accountability, so we're trying to create a culture around accountability by putting someone's name on a grid and giving them responsibility for a measure. But are we teaching them? Are we communicating with them effectively? Are we making them feel safe? Are we creating a sense of belonging? And are we equipping them for success, right? Across the organization. Same thing with how the STARS team communicates to its executives through the executive steering committee, which, I definitely believe, show me how engaged the executive steering committee is, and I'll show you how successful your STARS program is, right? Like that's how you communicate with those executives. Is it just a report out, or are we actually having a conversation that's meaningful and we're knocking down barriers and telling them how they can help us, but letting them steer us too, right? And not a report out. STARS culture is reflected in and created by how STARS meetings are conducted. Are they data driven or not? Are they right? Do we have data backing up what we're looking to do? But not too much data. We're making decisions. They're decision based, right? But they have some data behind them. Whether new ideas and innovations are pursued and adopted, we actually have something on a slide in just a second that I'll get on. And whether prioritization is placed on challenges within your control or within your influence, right? Like arguably everything is within our influence. Not everything is within our control. And, I've looked at studies showing that high performing plans focus more on the things they can control and less on things that are like within the market. Like if there's a measure that our market doesn't perform well in, we don't prioritize that measure because we know that there is some barrier market-wide that prevents the market from performing higher on that measure. That's just one example, but focus on the things that you can control or that you can influence and really go hard after those. And then a few things on headwinds and warning signs, right? So first, growth and expansion. This is not necessarily a warning sign, but it is a headwind, right? So when you are growing and expanding, it is challenging to sustain a strong culture, right? Like it stretches you. Many of you are going through this now, and it makes it hard to sustain the things that we need to have in place, right, to keep this strong culture going. Staff turnover makes it really hard because the second we teach someone, about a measure, they leave and we have to retrain a new person. We have to hire someone, train them, and it keeps us always behind. So it is a headwind. It's also a warning sign of a bad culture too, right? So this is a place where I think the more we create safe spaces, create senses of belonging, educate people, equip them, I think at least within the STARS program, I think we can begin to influence the staff turnover problem. Delayed decision making, I've touched on that already a bit, but I think the more when we see that being a problem within our organization, I think we need to face it head on and talk about it, right? And lack of budget prioritization. So this is a place where, if you are not getting the funds that you need, not that you should be getting a blank check, right? But if you can build cases for funds and you're not getting them, it's just something that needs to be. It is a warning sign, right? But it's a headwind to performing well and to building a strong culture. But it's something you need to tackle head on, I think. As well as poor vendor oversight, disengaged staff, right? So if your company is not doing, if your company does not have a culture of managing vendors aggressively or really providing strong oversight, these are places where, again, where you can begin to change things, right? Same with disengaged staff. This is what I was touching on with innovation, right? So we did a study, looked at a lot of plans and studied this is 2022 STARS performance. And based on the number of innovations that these companies did. So do these companies have a culture of innovation or not? So do they try new things, right? When they're constantly experimenting and piloting. Companies, health plans that said they didn't have any, achieved 3.9 stars on average, which is 4 stars. But again, this is 2022, so take that with a grain of salt, right? The message here is not in the performance, it's in the variance that we're going to see in a second. But health plans that had 1 to 5 innovations had 0 difference in average star rating than companies that had none, right? But companies that had 6 or more, performed at half a star higher, right? So, and these don't have to be we built a NASA command center for our STARS program, right? These are things like, hey, we started texting members for the first time ever. We started using projected cut points for our provider incentive plan for the first time ever, right? Things like that we're actually continually kind of making incremental improvements and innovating. But the more we do, you can see it makes a difference, right? I'll turn it back to Jess for this one, actually.
Yeah, I know we only have 4 minutes left and definitely not enough time to get through this, but ultimately this slide outlines some of the common traits of high performing plans and in their experience. These are the things that are key differentiators. I think Rex and Luis hit upon many of these. Just want to call out, the first one's obviously organization-wide culture of quality, and the reason we are here today. Establishing that formal governance structure with all departments impacting STARS, involving collectively driving engagement, predictive analytics and robust reporting that drives strategy. And I know this is so much easier said than done. As a former quality health plan leader, one of my biggest frustrations was the amount of dependencies me and my teams had on other teams to get us data and analytics that could help us inform leadership of our strategy. Focusing on what is, Rex had talked about what's within the plan's control and flawlessly executing on that, making sure the voice of the member is the main driver of all decisions made in your organization to improve your member experience. There are a lot of creative ways to do this. We've seen organization-wide contests where employees submit their ideas to improve the member experience, and the winner gets their idea implemented and recognized, and a charitable donation of their choice. Or something we've seen has been very effective is following a member journey that did not go well from start to finish and having the entire organization weigh in on ideas of how to prevent this from happening in the future. All these traits create that culture of excellence that's truly needed for your STARS program to be successful. And if you have multiple lines of business, they'll trickle down and positively affect those too. Next slide.
Yeah, and just 2 slides left, so we'll make this fast. If you are, and I'm just going to kind of read this actually, if you are the leader of something, a project, a program, so a project like a member incentive, right? So I'm putting this all in STARS terms. A program like STARS, a functional area like quality, a line of business like Medicare Advantage, or if you're in charge of a health plan, right? Right, it's your job to make sure everyone who needs to be your team, your cross-functional partners, your vendors, etc. It's your job to make sure all of them are on the same page and understand what they need to do for your project, program, functional area, line of business, health plan, etc. to succeed. Exponentially true for STARS because STARS is the ultimate team sport. It's not. This is definitely not a one-person gig. But I just want to stress that it's really you have tons of influence. So influence is important, right? And if we have a bad apple in our program, and we're not offsetting it, then that bad apple is going to make our program hell, right? But your influence is most important, and you have the influence in your role, whatever your role may be. If you use your influence for good, you can create a positive culture, the right culture, the culture of quality within your organization, right? So I just don't want you to walk away and think this is something our health plan has to do. Like, this is something you have to do. And the first thing that we do when we're trying to create a culture is control the climate in the room that we're in right now, right? So when we can start doing that, then we can expand and expand the scope of what we want to do from a culture standpoint. But what you're doing every day is building your culture or influencing your culture. And that's actually it. So I know we're at time. If you have any questions, feel free to always shoot us a note. My contact information is in here, Mix on here. We also have, of course, Jessica, Luis, and Nate, and others. But any questions or anything else before we end?
Yeah, Rex, just switch the next slide to outline.
Oh, sorry.
Events. Yeah, just again, plug for the, November 17th is Thursday, the leveraging the voice of the member to improve member experience. And then this is a Rise STARS Masterclass in San Diego, December 13th through 15th. And we're going to be presenting with Hyperlift at the pre-conference workshop on December 13th, a deep dive into the STARS math. So hope we see you there.
Definitely. Okay, I know we're over. So thanks everyone. Hope it was helpful. We'll post the recording on the YouTube site. But the link is in here. We'll send the deck out to everyone who, you know, we have information on who looks like showed up. So thanks so much for your time though. See you on Thursday.